Have you ever considered that we are living in a unique time, that something world-changing is about to happen, and that it might concern you? If so, you're in the right place. Keep listening, and you'll hear thought-provoking views behind the news that point to a new and better future for all. Many people now sense that humanity is not alone. So consider this. If the Christ or the Buddha walked among us today as modern men, would we recognize them? What would they be saying? And most importantly, would we listen? Every Sunday on this program, Share International Radio will examine extraordinary events that are unfolding behind the headline news. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for. And now, welcome to this week's show.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Diana Gold Holland. I'm your host today on a Share on the Air Radio, which I co-host with my friend Cielito Pascual, who's in Seattle. I have a very special honor in hosting today's show. If you're listening live, today is the 1st of May, and it was exactly 35 years ago that I first heard of this story, the Maitreya'S story, and first came in touch with, in contact with Maitreya'S teachings, which is our theme for today. So it's a particularly great honor. If you are listening for the first time, I certainly encourage you to go and listen to our 2 inaugural programs that aired last October. You will find them on the free archives at OMTimes Radio. And for our show, Share on the Air Radio North America. And those 2 introductory programs will give you a very complete background. You can also go to share, S-H-A-R-E, -international.org, and there you will find the complete story. Last week, my co-host Cielito was talking with her guest about the new energies that are flooding into the world, thanks to the presence of Maitreya, who is at the head of a number of great teachers who have now come into the world, who are physically here to help us, help humanity at this very crucial time for Mother Earth. Now, this group is known as the Masters of Wisdom, and as I have said, at their head stands Maitreya, who is known as the world teacher for this new age, just dawning now, the age of Aquarius, but he is also widely expected under many other names. The Christians expect him as the Christ, the Jews expect him as the Messiah, the Hindus expect him as Krishna returned, the Imam Mahdi is the name used by the Muslims, and for the Hindus, and for also he is the returned Buddha, who was prophesied to come 2,500 years ago by Gautama Buddha. Now, Maitreya is not a religious leader, but a teacher in the broadest sense in the world today. He comes to address political, social, and economic causes and concerns, the problems of a contemporary world, the problems of the world now. He is not a religious teacher. He's not a religious leader. He is not here to found a religion, but he does have certain teachings which are very, very clear on the art of self-realization, as he calls it. Unfortunately, we haven't got our guest Mike here, who has been a long-time student of the art of realization, and was going to tell us today about the profound effect that Maitreya's teachings can have on all of us. So basically, I guess we'll shoulder on without him and see how things go. The teachings that we would be talking about today are found in a book called Maitreya'S Teachings, The Laws of Life, which is introduced and edited by British author Benjamin Creme. We'll talk more on the other side of the call. Keep on holding on.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
Maitreya'S Mission, the book by Benjamin Creme, is a riveting exploration of life ahead. It reveals how the world teacher, Maitreya, and other ancient guardians of the human race are emerging now and are showing us how to release our divine potential. Investigate for yourself at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
What if living didn't have to be so serious?
What if you could move beyond your problems with greater confidence and ease than you've ever imagined?
Throw your labels out the window and join the Irreverent Therapist for practical tips and a very different way of approaching the changes you would like to create.
Marilyn Bradford
and Pam Hodling
have empowered hundreds of people to come out of self-judgment, quit looking to experts, and begin to create the lives they desire.
Join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Irreverent Therapist Show.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Dr. Kevin here, and I want to invite you every Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, to join me on the Dr. Kevin Show, where we have a diversity of guests who help you step outside the box, behind the curtain, and see what a load of crap is going on in the world today, so you have more information with which to make better decisions. We'll see you there. Namaste.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, it's Diana Gold Holland with you again. I'm actually trying to get my a different way now, and with any luck, he will be able to connect. Yeah. Dear, oh dear, this isn't working either. Okay. All right. Well, then let's get back to our theme for today, which is the teachings of Maitreya, who, as I said, has come in part to teach us the art, what he calls the art of self-realization. Now, self-realization is something that other people might call enlightenment, and other people might just call right living, because essentially we are here to develop ourselves, to give our souls a chance to experience this incarnation and learn to evolve through that whole process. So Maitreya, and you know, we were presenting this show as a show on isms, which Maitreya says can imprison people, can keep them from becoming who they truly are, keep them from having an experience of their own soul, who they truly are. isms are a form of prisons and a form of entrapment. If people get caught up in them, they simply do not get to touch who they themselves are. And isms are of many kinds. We have, of course, capitalism, communism, all that kind of isms. We have religionisms. We have all kinds of teachings of that type. But there are also the prisons of addictions and compulsions and that kind of problem as well. And as we all know, these problems such as drug use, depression, etc., are very, very widespread in our society and actually getting worse. It's quite appalling when you look up some of the statistics of how much life and money is lost with these problems every time. So Maitreya has said that drugs and other addictions are a form of slow suicide, that people turn to them because they have no sense of who they truly are. And so the first thing to do is to teach self-respect, says Maitreya, to help such people develop respect for themselves first. He says that without self-respect, no further progress can be made. And so that is pretty clear. You have to be able to love and respect yourself first so that you can function in this so-called reality. Mike was going to share with us a technique that is called the Who Am I technique, and has been widely taught, especially in the East, and also by the master Jiddu Krishnamurti, who was a very great philosopher who died around a little earlier in the 1900s. A little later in the 1900s. So this technique is one that can actually help you get in touch with your own soul, to have an experience of what Maitreya calls the self. When you are in a state that is conditioned, such as the conditionings of addictions and compulsions, you are not actually touching your own personality, your own self. You are at the whim and the mercy of other energies flowing through you. And in having an experience of who you are, you can get back to that central core that is always, always present in you and that can make itself felt. So if, for example, you're having a temper tantrum and you use this technique, you can say, who am I? Am I this anger? Am I this resentment? And you find that you are not. And so you can go back with, who am I? Am I this? No. Then who am I? Am I that? No. Then am I this? No. And as you keep going back further and further in this questioning, you get to a deeper point when you do have an experience of the soul. And this is one technique that you can use daily to just keep yourself on track and begin to gain that respect and that self-control that you can want. Another great teaching of Maitreya'S is, one of the key teachings of Maitreya is sincerity, honesty, and detachment. These are the three principles that can govern your life and lead you to happiness and a great amount of peace. So what is sincerity, honesty, and detachment? Well, author Benjamin Creme says, when you think one thing and say another and do something which is totally different again, you are lost. Honesty of mind leads to honest speech and honest action. And then this harmony leads to peace and happiness. This is printed in the book that we're talking about now, Maitreya'S Teachings, The Laws of Life. And it is one of several books put out by author Benjamin Creme, that's C-R-E-M-E, who lives in London, England. And this is how I first heard about the story when somebody presented me Mr. Creme's first book that came out in 1980, which was called The Reappearance of the Christ. Messages from Maitreya, the Christ, was the one I saw first. And these are, Benjamin Creme is the author of a good 17 books now that have been translated into many, many languages, and they are absolutely fascinating. You can go and read extracts of them on the Share International website, that's share-international.org, and you can find them in any bookstore or library as well. Open any of Mr. Creme's book on any one page, and I suspect that you will keep reading. They are a fascinating account of the world as it will evolve with the help of these great teachers in the world. And indeed, Mr. Creme has been traveling the world since early in the 1970s, talking about the advent of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, talking about them emerging slowly into public vision as humanity develops more hope and expectancy of their presence so that they can come before us without infringing our free will. Because as you must know, the great masters of the world are not allowed by cosmic law to just step in and wave a magic wand and make everything better. They're not here to say, you do this and you do that, etc. They are here to actually guide and counsel us and help us in these very, very wise ways that they have. Why are they called masters? Well, not because there is any slavery involved of any type, but because they have gained complete and absolute control over themselves in all ways. They can do physical things that people can't do, such as appear and disappear at will. They can certainly walk on water, and they have developed their contact with their soul and with greater divine wisdom that allows them the scope of vision. This, Mr. Creme says, is Maitreya's very great gift to the world today, is his complete and utter understanding of the laws of life. So I invite you to read any of Mr. Creme's books. They just make total and absolute sense. And Mr. Creme himself is a very distinguished man. He is a role model for anyone seeking to serve the plan for this, the divine plan for this world here and now. So I do invite you to check it out and see what you think of his writings yourself. Now, I did mention that there are 4 books available free of charge for you to read online. You will find them on the share-international.org website, and those are particularly good pieces to start with. So go check them out. If you go take a look at our Facebook page, that's Share on the Air Radio North America, you will find there the links to all of those all of those books and to other ones that are available. So I invite you to do check that out, and especially the ones that we're talking about today, called Maitreya'S Teachings, The Laws of Life. In terms of Maitreya'S teachings about honesty, sincerity, and detachment, we have mentioned how honesty of mind leads to honest speech and honest action. But what does Maitreya mean by sincerity of heart, the second of the principles he talks about, the second and the laws of life. Well, if you think of, say, having a heart-to-heart conversation with someone, that's what it's about, and we'll talk more on the other side of the break. See you then.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Are you on a spiritual path and want a quick reference guide? Look no further. The booklet Ageless Wisdom Teaching introduces key spiritual concepts, including reincarnation, meditation, and initiation. Download the book free online. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
Live with Medium Lisa Phoenix, Mediumship Messages and Musings, explores mediumship and all things metaphysical. Lisa Phoenix invites you to reach above and beyond your everyday experiences, to explore new dimensions in the spirit world. She will do live readings to connect callers to their loved ones in spirit, shares engaging stories and teachings from her own personal experience, and will have intriguing conversations with other mediums, spiritual teachers, and healers to help you understand the metaphysical world so you can connect to these forces in your day-to-day life. Join your host on this magical and metaphysical journey into the world of spirit every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hey ladies, do you want to have that good hair day feeling all the time? Gentlemen, would you want your special someone to have that glow, letting you know she's feeling completely satisfied? This feeling and that glow can be yours by embracing your sexual power. So join me, Rachel Kenley, award-winning romance author, on the O-Spot. The O-Spot will guide you to that peak with guest interviews, book discussions, and conversations on the thrills of sexual empowerment. Put the zing back in your life. Come up and see me sometime on the O-Spot, live on Hump Day at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
This is Diana Gold Holland, your host for today's programs on the laws of life, the book Maitreya'S teaching. And good news, we've managed to get Mike on the line now. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Better late than never, right?
Right.
So, Mike, before we get back to the practice of sincerity of heart, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Well, my name is Mike Nolley. I live in the Oregon area. I've been studying esoteric and ageless wisdom teachings for many years. I started with Share International back in 2005 or 6 and heard about Maitreya and was intrigued. And then quite quickly I recognized there was something really extraordinary about this information. It had a tenor and a quality that was different than anything I'd ever experienced before. And that sense has continued to grow as I've continued to volunteer, and especially recently as I've been rereading this wonderful book that we're going to discuss today, Maitreya'S Teachings, The Laws of Life. It's really changed my life in a way that it's difficult to describe with words.
Well, can you try?
Yes, I can try. Basically, I'm a recovering addict, as I know lots of people are who may be listening to this program. I'm addicted to all kinds of things, to attachment, to the internet, to TV watching, to substances like alcohol and caffeine. And I let them, in many cases, condition my life. And the response, the solution to that, I'm convinced, is the practice that's talked about in this wonderful book, and that's sincerity of spirit, honesty of mind, and detachment. And what that boils down to is being yourself, being the authentic person that you are, not the conditioning which causes you to continually be addicted to one thing or another.
Okay. And so we were talking about honesty of mind, sincerity of heart, and detachment being the key principles that Maitreya talks about. How do you define sincerity? What does Maitreya mean by sincerity of heart? And how does that tie in with recovering from addictions?
Well, the technique of the heart is actually relatively simple, and it centers around the continuous recollection of you being the self, the continuous focus upon the heart center. And for those that may not know about this, the heart center, according to many of these teachings, is on the right side of the chest. This is the place where the self remains in the person and pure, untainted by the process of being and becoming, And so when you focus there, with the focus on the I am, on the authentic you experience awareness, and that's sincerity.
Okay, awareness is sincerity.
Yeah, sincerity and awareness, I think, are the same thing. It's authenticity. I think the best thing would be to quote Maitreya here. He says that everyone has his own wealth, which no one can take away. This wealth is self-realization. And that's the part of you that experiences everything in your life without becoming attached to one experience or another. So take, for example, the situation of addiction. We become lost when we identify with one experience or another, one aspect of ourselves or another. And if I identify with the body, I become attached to pleasure, and I run from pain. If I'm attached to my emotions, I become attached to my feeling of security or safety, and then I run from insecurity or a lack of safety. If I'm attached to my mind, I attach to my thoughts and the feeling of being right, and then I run from not being right. But none of those things are the self. The self only witnesses these things. And so Maitreya says, if you approach life with honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, you won't be trapped by these things.
Mm-hmm. I like the definition he gives of awareness as well. Mm-hmm. In this book, he says that awareness is the mother of creation.
Oh, that's a wonderful quote.
Yeah, awareness can never be divided nor imposed.
Exactly.
Textbooks cannot describe it because there is no beginning nor end to it. Awareness can only be experienced.
Yes. And then later it says, awareness is a seed in all creation and in every individual. Mm-hmm. So the wonderful freedom about this teaching is it releases us to a type of life which is confined neither to a sense of pure austerity, nor to involvement in the circumstance of our life and being submerged in that. The two remain in balance. The self experiences itself as the self, and it also experiences all of creation. And when those two things come into balance, then you experience that, which is awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you were talking about being and becoming a while ago.
Yes, being and becoming.
So the soul, or I guess you would call it the self, mm-hmm. Having this experience of becoming, why does the soul come in the first place? What are we doing here?
What would you, that's the perennial question. I think the most intuitive explanation of that, and I've heard it other places besides in these books, is that God is essentially experiencing him or herself. The self is experiencing the self. When I'm in the state of being, there's no separation and no forms. Only that exists. Only awareness exists. In the process of becoming, I experience all the aspects of God, all the colors of the rainbow, all of the light, all of the different types of experience, which are the potential in that. And I think the only difficulty is when we make the mistake of shutting ourselves off from being. And I think there's a really good analogy to this, which will make a certain amount of sense. The heart is the engine in the body. It drives the blood through the blood vessels and into all the other parts of the body. And without that blood, without that life, and also without the nervous system, the body can't exist. So similarly, the person can't actually survive in his being and becoming without the two aspects of life, without the nourishing awareness that surrounds him, and also the vital connection with being, which is inward in nature. If he cuts off one aspect of himself, he dies.
Right. And the isms that Maitreya talks about, including compulsions and addictions, these are ways of cutting ourselves off.
Yes.
The addict or the compulsive person basically feels, I believe, very much alone.
Yeah.
And therefore retreats even more from reality.
Yeah, from the realities of life.
So, what about detachment? That is the third key in Maitreya's teachings. How do we obtain detachment? What is it? Is it something that can be taught?
I think detachment is probably the most important aspect of the teaching for a recovering addict. For someone who's recovering from some sort of identification, the first step is the recognition that the problem exists, right? Mm-hmm. That the problem is not to do with them being a bad person or some process of shame or a cycle, but it's something which is in their life but not them. And that, I think, it's the seed, the beginning of the detachment process. And so the initial question which must be asked is, well, if I'm not my addiction, who am I? And that starts the process of learning to distinguish between what the self is, the immortal being which is beyond mind, body, and spirit, and those things, and the aspects of our life, the isms, the conditioning, and the various bodies. So I wanted to quote from Ramana Maharshi, just to bring out the fact that these teachings are very, very similar and connected, and indeed with all the other traditions as well. He says, "Thus when the mind stays in the heart, the I, which is the source of all thoughts, will go, and the self which ever exists will shine. Whatever one does, one should do without the egoity I. If one acts in this way, all will appear as of the nature of God." Mm-hmm. And he also says, when the mind that is subtle goes out through the brain and the sense organs, the gross names and forms appear. So that would be addiction, life, appearance. But when it stays in the heart, the names and forms disappear. So detachment would be the practice of living life focused in the heart, rather than focused in the objects of perception. So if I'm experiencing pleasure, I'm detached. I realize it's a passing phase. If I'm experiencing pain, that too is a passing phase, and I remain centered in the heart.
One of the points that Mr. Krem brings up in the Maitreya teaching book actually Maitreya brings up, is that the child, the innocence of the child is actually, very much in touch with the experience of the self and with that detachment.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of freshness to the way a child looks at everything, and that innocence, that curiosity, is actually allowing the energy of life to flow through the child.
Yeah.
Even when he's having a temper tantrum or
right.
what have you, it's done when it's done, and then it's over. It does not attach. That's right. It is not attached to.
I marvel at that too, how a child can go from the state of being completely angry to being, completely placid in a very short space of time. And I think for a human being, it's difficult to let go of experiences that. So then we continue to allow them to condition us as the day or the week or the year or the life goes on. And then those become the isms, the aspects of our expression in life, which are artificial to a certain extent, which are built up by the process of thought and memory. So by remaining centered in the heart, I never approach life from the standpoint of memory or conditioning, or at least that's the ideal, the goal.
Yeah, that's
and the child has already mastered that. They have the sense of it because they haven't developed memory, the conditioning.
Interesting. And there's our music again. Mike, I'm glad we got hold of you, and we'll be back again after the break.
Okay.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
Now there's a book about UFOs that stands out. British author Benjamin Creme has worked directly with the Space Brothers and writes about their spiritual mission in The Gathering of the Forces of Light, a truly inspiring book. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
What if business could be fun? What if business is the adventure of living? What are you choosing? Where do you do business that makes it easier, more fun, or more joyful for you? We'd love to see where you do business. Connect with us on Instagram at Joy of Business or Twitter at Joy of Business. And share your pictures with hashtags BusinessDoneWhere and Joy of Business. Let's change the world with business.
Looking for inspiration?
Want to be inspired?
Not sure where to go?
Find Mark and Kim every Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on Inspired Living.
Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual.
Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back, one and all. We're here with Mike Nolley at last, discussing the book Maitreya'S Teachings, The Laws of Life, that tell us a lot about how we can escape conditioning, compulsions, addictions, and all of things of that nature.
I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the intrinsic value of this book in terms of the experience of it. I think one of the most unusual things about this book, and also teachings that are much like it, is that it's possible to experience what we're talking about the experience of being, of awareness, while reading it. And then the application comes into taking that attitude and that awareness into your everyday life. It's not a matter of submitting to an ideology or becoming part of a tradition. It's about taking the sense of yourself that you get from this, and then maintaining it.
And it is a very liberating and large way of being. It's hard to explain this, I know, but as you were saying, Mike, once you've had this experience, you recognize it.
You know when it's there, yeah.
You know when it's there. And of course you can experience it in many different ways as well. How do you experience it as an artist and musician, for example?
I think that's, I experience it less as a musician now because I don't practice enough as I used to. But when one becomes really skilled in any sort of art, and I was a jazz pianist for many years, you get to a level where the skill sort of stops. I mean, you develop as much skill as you can, and then during the act of performance, something entirely different happens. You're not in the process of doing the skill anymore. You're expressing something which is beyond the skill. And you have this sort of uncountable experience of watching yourself play. You're not involved with the playing. The playing is happening and you're enjoying it, but it's not you. Like it's not somehow you that's doing it. Something else is doing that's around you. And the best experiences I've had in music were like that, where I was enjoying the music, but it wasn't me playing. So that's connected with this sense of the observer, of pure authenticity and originality that I think is that soul state. And, it happens by gradations, but a practiced musician or artist will experience that.
Well, I think you can be in the zone with almost anything that you do as well.
Anything.
Connected in that way.
It could be sweeping the Buddhist experience of sweeping, and then all of a sudden it's not him sweeping, it's just the broom and the universe. It's hard to describe, but it can be any everyday activity, anything. This is why I think Maitreya says, do your duty with sincerity, honesty, and detachment. Because the duty is that everyday thing in life that's your duty to do as a human being. It's your thing to do in life. And when you do that with the presence of being that's being talked about here, then you don't experience suffering. You don't experience the highs and lows and the tension and pain that you normally do.
Yeah, this is because you become detached, and that's why Maitreya had put so much stock in that. Let's talk a little bit more about Maitreya. The big question is, why do we need Maitreya? Why do we need anyone to help us?
I think the short answer to that is we don't need Maitreya in the sense of a separate being. But the wonderful thing about Maitreya is that he's not a separate being in reality. He says, I am in you and you are in me. He embodies awareness. So he says, don't run after me. If you run after me, you'll lose me. So if we run after Maitreya, if we say, I really like Maitreya, I want to go visit him and things like this, I want to go visit his ashram, I want to see him in person, I want to shake his hand, that's making it personal. But in reality, it's not personal. The experience of Maitreya is best had in yourself and also in creation. He says, I'm happiest when you see me in you. That means seeing awareness in you. That doesn't negate you. That affirms your individuality, the sparkle of individuality, and allows you to do your duty, the everyday activities of life, your dharma, with the right attitude.
But he's also bringing sweeping changes into the world at this time that are very much needed. If on the program last week, Cielito and her guest Cindy Bruder were discussing some of these great energies that are pouring now into the world, and I would like to just mention that again, that Maitreya is the embodiment of the love principle, the Christ principle, and he is pouring this energy of love and transformation daily, 24/7 into the world, and it's beginning to show.
I think that's exactly right, and the wonderful thing about this is that it is affecting everybody, whether you know about Maitreya or not, whether you've read this book, whether you've seen him or not. In some way, I think everybody's beginning to experience awareness, and that's changing everything. People are breaking out of old forms, out of the state of ism that we're talking about before, of being entrapped in politics, in religion, in any aspect of our life which has become too imprisoning. People are struggling to break out of it, and that's that awareness which is working in us and around us.
Yes, I would agree, and some of these old forms really do need breaking down. They are obsolete. It's time they went, and humanity is beginning to find its voice now, and stand up and demand justice and demand freedom, and all of this, of course, is based on the message of Maitreya, the reason that he is here, which is to help us to solve our problems. And to put his message very quickly, I'd like you to just comment on his message: share and save the world.
Yes. I think my favorite quote from Maitreya is that
while you're looking for that, I'll just direct our listeners, because we're going to be running out of time soon, to once again to our Facebook page. There are all kinds of goodies there, folks, that if you are curious or touched by this message at all, if this opens the door for you on May the 1st of this year, as it did for me so many years ago, I just welcome you to follow up your curiosity, follow up your interest, and open a complete new world to yourself. There are many resources, as I said, on the Facebook page, Share on the Air Radio North America, and also on the website, share-international.org, where you will find a complete realm to explore, including many of Mr. Krem's books, and some of those, again, free for you to download. On next week's program, Cielito will be back, and she will be interviewing Ron Cole, an environmental educator who works with young people. And he will be explaining why the energies behind Maitreya'S emergence are helping young people have an unexpected influence on world issues. So we see this happening. We see very special children coming in now, not surprisingly at this time, to serve at this time of great transition for the earth. And supported by Maitreya, the Masters of Wisdom, they will definitely be very, very powerful people coming up. Mike, have you found that quotation?
Yes. I have a couple of things I want to read. This is really wonderful. Remain open-minded. Enjoy life. When you enjoy life, it is as if you are sitting on the beach looking at the vast ocean. At that moment, you experience serenity, tranquility, detachment within. You do not think of your bank account at that moment. Nobody lectures you at that moment. The gift of life flowers within you. Experience this, and you will realize you are a unique person. You are unique in this creation. And here's one more. Be what you are. Do not follow one another. If you practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, you will know the self. You will know me. You will know the Lord.
Very complete. Very complete. Thank you for being our guest today, Mike, even though it was a bit of a truncated interview. And thank you, listeners, for being with us today. Our show, Share on the Air Radio North America, presents thought-provoking views behind the news, as you will have heard today. We do so for your consideration only. Our premise is that humanity is not alone, and that we have these great teachers in our midst now to help us come forward and evolve as a complete human race as well as individually. So please, by all means, become acquainted with Maitreya, Maitreya, and the works of Mr. Krem to learn more and more about these things. Mike, I'll leave the final word to you. Do you have any last things you'd like to say?
No, thank you, Diana, very much for this. This has been a great opportunity. And, I encourage people to actually read the book, to buy it and read it. Mm-hmm. Have their own experience of it, their own authentic experience with it. Absolutely.
And there's a wonderful story for people who go and get the book, The Awakening of Humanity. If you get that book, there's a beautiful story on page 76, which we won't have time for, but look it up. You'll love it. Thank you all for being with us today on Share on the Air Radio with my guest Mike Nolley, and with information on Maitreya'S teachings on isms and how to experience the self. Bye for now.